Sustainable. Wonderful. May I now call upon Mrs. Lata Nair to felicitate Lieutenant General Sharma. I call upon Jisa Joy to welcome Professor M.D. Nalapat. I call upon Shri Supreet Singh to welcome Dr. Joseph M. Chalil. And I call upon Supriya to welcome Shri Supreet Singh. May I now request Shri KPR Nair, the Managing Director of Konarak Publishers, to deliver the formal welcome address. Mr. Nair.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Good evening, everybody. I wish to extend a warm welcome to all the guests present here and those attending online, and special welcome to all the media persons. Konarak is very happy to present another important title, and this time concerning an issue that shook the world, COVID-19, and how we emerged from it, and the future steps needed to protest against future such pandemics. The book, India Beyond the Pandemic, A Sustainable Health Towards Global Quality Healthcare, authored by Dr. Joseph M. Chalil, Ambassador Pradeep K. Kapoor, and Professor M.D. Nalapat, is very timely indeed. But before saying anything more about the book, let me first welcome our guest of honor, Sri Amitabh Kant, IAS, India's G20 Sherpa and former CEO, Niti Aayog, Professor Dr. Ruby Pawanka, Asia Pacific Association of Allergy, Asthma and Clinical Immunology, and former President World Allergy Organization, who will be joining us virtually, and Lieutenant General Dr. UK Sharma, former Commandant, Army Hospital, Research and Referral, New Delhi, and Professor M.D. Nalapat, Manipal University, and UNESCO Chair. I would like to also extend a warm welcome to many people who are sitting here, took time out of their busy schedule. Vice Admiral G. Ashok Kumar, India's first National Maritime Security Coordinator, and his wife, Mrs. Geeta Ashok. And Sri D.K. Pathak, IPS, retired former Director General, BSF. Mrs. Lakshmi Puri, former Assistant Secretary General at the UN, former Deputy Executive Director of UN Women, and wife of Union Minister Sri Hardeep S. Puri. By the way, Dr. Puri Saab is also my author. Sri Alphonse Kannandanam, former Union Minister of State, Professor S.D. Muni, former Indian Ambassador and academics of JNU, whose book on dabbling with diplomacy we released only a month back. Ambassador Venu Rajamani, a very old friend of mine and former ambassador to the Netherlands. Ambassador Amarendra Katwa, retired former Director General of the Indian Council for Cultural Relations. Miss Reshmi Sharma, wife of our guest of honor, Dr. Lieutenant General UK Sharma. And Mrs. Lakshmi Bai, Princess of the SOL Travancore family and author. So, Sunita Pant Bensal, a dear friend of mine and Konarak author here. So I wanted to welcome all of you also because you took time to be here. Let me also welcome all the esteemed guests in the audience. This book owes its genesis to a chance dialogue between Professor Monu Nalapat and Dr. Joseph M. Chalil on the idea of writing a book on the pandemic and the lessons learned from it for India and the world. I'm glad that we went forward with the idea, as now it has become a global event with the UNN News as our esteemed co-publisher for the North American markets. Konarak's partnership with the UNN News is certainly going to open the doors for many such joint editions soon. While we are thankful for things to have turned normal again for the world and to be meeting like this in person, nobody can forget or should forget the havoc the pandemic caused across the world. That is why we in Konarak are happy to have brought out this book that focuses on how India successfully tackled COVID-19 and how necessary it is to be equipped for future such pandemics that wreak havoc. With the news about COVID-19 strains continuing to emerge and fear that another pandemic could be just around the corner, the book focuses on critical areas that need improvement and outlines concrete steps to build a healthcare system ready for the challenges of the 21st century and beyond. A few words about the authors. Dr. Joseph M. Chalil, MD, MBA, is a best-selling author and leads numerous healthcare enterprises in the US, while Ambassador Pradeep K. Kapoor is renowned for his distinguished career collaborating with leaders and policy makers across various continents. Who is not here, he will be addressing us virtually. And Professor M.D. Nalapat is UNESCO Peace Chair at Manipal University and Editorial Director of TV Network India and the Sunday Guardian. Working with such a great team of authors, an academician, a diplomat turned academic, and a professional doctor from different parts of the world has been a unique experience indeed for Konark. This book launch also makes a new phase for us in Konark, entering into a joint venture with the UNN News USA to promote some of its most special titles across the world. The UNN News will publish physical books through its print-on-demand service and Kindle version globally. I would also like to say a few words about our event sponsor, PCHPL, a Psychocare Health Limited, and its director and founder, Supreet Singh here. Sri Supreet Singh is one of those dedicated leaders who started his career learning various roles such as broadcaster, assistant producer, creative writer, and reporter. But after realizing the true potential and importance of the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry, he started his venture, Psychocare, in 2013 to fulfill his dream of becoming a successful entrepreneur. His sheer hard work and determination pushed his organization to new heights. He started with just 17 products in 2013 and today markets more than 900 products across India. Thank you. It is an honor for Konark to bring out this book, and we hope to continue to bring out such titles that matter to humankind. In fact, I would like to share another piece of news. Konark is working with the 3 authors to bring out their forthcoming, which is also on another pertinent topic beyond the G20, the future of India's leadership. Thank you all for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nair. I now call upon Professor M.D. Nalapat to introduce the book to us. He's one of the authors, as we know. Nalapat, sir.
Thank you very much, and I'm very honored to be in this distinguished company, both who are here in person and who are here virtually. I'd like to say that I think a very good way of finding out about the book would be to read the book. So please allow me to give you to say a few words about why this book was written. It was basically written because COVID has been a pandemic unlike any other. It's a pandemic that changed the world. Now, when you talk about the great influenza about a century ago, it was a pandemic that changed the world. It affected attitudes, it affected mindset, it affected geography, geopolitics. I think from the point of view of mankind, there's been a humankind, there's been a huge, absolutely huge impact regarding the onset of the pandemic and the very steps that were taken to battle the pandemic, the pace at which vaccines were made, and almost very quickly a consensus getting evolved about what needed to be done to confront this pandemic. And may I say that in all this, a country that Dr. Chalil and Ambassador Kapoor, my co-authors, love very much, India, I think we did quite a fair amount during that pandemic, both in terms of production of vaccines, both in terms of originating of vaccines, and frankly, in ensuring that in 2021, there was no lockdown. There was a lockdown when the pandemic first struck, but subsequently many other countries also went into lockdowns, but work went on. And ultimately, a kind of a herd immunity was realized, and the experience has been very valuable. Frankly, our belief is, and pardon me for saying so, but I have nothing to do with medical science. But Dr. Joseph Chalil is if I may say so, the brain behind the medical component of this book. Ambassador Kapoor of the diplomatic component, and as far as the geopolitics is concerned, a little bit here and there by me. But the point of the matter is that India can be front and center in being a provider of healthcare to the world, in being a provider of sustainable healthcare. And we're not just talking about sustainable in terms of the environment. We're talking in terms sustainable in terms of the economics. You can have extremely sustainable solutions that are very good for the planet, that reduce carbon emissions to zero, but they could be unaffordable. And if they're unaffordable, they're not practical. Now, Dr. Chalil, I'm very pleased to recognize, if I may say so, Dr. Chalil's partner here in the audience, and a wonderful person. And I think she has fallen in love with India as much as Joe has always been in love with India. And may I say that from the geopolitical point of view, I would say this experience during the pandemic has been incredibly valuable in the global south, looking at India as a provider, not as a taker, but as a provider of healthcare. And from that point of view, this country is uniquely positioned to have sustainable healthcare, not just sustainable, as I said, but sustainable in economic terms. And the United States has got an unsustainable healthcare system. In fact, it's a nightmare to visit the United States, because if you get a cold or you get a mild bout of coughing or wheezing, and God forbid you have to consult a doctor, you could end up bankrupt. Most of us in this country would end up bankrupt as a consequence of that. It's completely unsustainable economically, apart from the other unsustainable impacts of that. Hence, if I may say so, India as a central, the central point of so many spokes, geographical spokes. All these spokes can work together with India as a hub to ensure quality healthcare at affordable prices and in a sustainable manner. I don't want to take any more time, because far better, minds than mine are here waiting to speak. And I'd just like to say that was our ambition when we wrote this book. And we are grateful to Konarak, we are grateful to Mr. Nair for his wonderful team for having helped us through this process. And once again, may I repeat, I'm very, very glad to be here. And I hope you'll be glad when you read the book. And I certainly hope that we will move towards a period in which India serves not just as a model, but as an actual hub, if I may say so, of geographical spokes of different countries, so that we can make quality, sustainable healthcare affordable to as many people on the planet as we can, which in my view should mean the entire planet. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think that's a very auspicious request, keeping in mind the old saying, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. It's actually the whole planet which we need to look after. With that, we come to the release of the book, India Beyond the Pandemic, A Sustainable Path Towards Global Quality Healthcare. May I now request Sri Amitabh Kant to release the book and present the first copy to Dr. Joseph Chalil. Can we have a generous round of applause? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We now have a very special message coming up from the Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas and Housing and Urban Affairs, Shri Hardeep Singh Puri, who couldn't join us because of other commitments. But of course, he's represented very well here by Lakshmi Puri ji. He is an Indian politician, former diplomat and author, has been inducted into the Council of Ministers as Minister of State, Independent Charge for Housing and Urban Affairs since 2017 and has been given multiple additional charges. He's a 1974 batch Indian Foreign Service officer and served as the permanent representative of India to the United Nations in Geneva and New York and served in multiple places. So we are very honored to have received this message from Shri Hardeep Singh Puri. Over to the message.
I congratulate Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, Professor Madhav Das Nalapat, and Dr. Joseph Chalil on their book, India Beyond the Pandemic. I have known Professor Nalapat and Ambassador Kapoor for a very long time. They are among the more insightful Indian thinkers on geopolitics today. Dr. Chalil is a renowned medical professional with expertise that cuts across multiple domains. The COVID-19 pandemic was a defining moment of the 21st century. It altered the way humanity dealt with crises and reshaped fundamental bonds of society. In that difficult time for the world, India emerged as a rising power. Its assured handling of the pandemic established its credentials as a trustworthy and responsible global power. This book outlines that critical period as it sheds light on India's management of the pandemic across dimensions of public health, scientific innovation, administration, digital infrastructure, and geopolitics. The authors have examined the vulnerabilities of the global healthcare architecture and underscored how India's robust healthcare system stood out. India completed the largest public vaccination in history by administering more than 2.2 billion doses. That 1 billion doses were administered during the height of the lockdowns was a tremendous achievement for India's scientific, regulatory and administrative agencies, medical experts, policymakers, and above all, our frontline workers. We operationalized a highly complex system of cold storage, efficient transportation systems and logistics, and credible reporting in no time at all. Not only did we deal with the crisis domestically, we also distributed 300 million doses to more than 100 nations. India's healthcare system has benefited from Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji's reformative agenda, which included enabling policies such as higher FDI into the sector, production-linked incentive schemes, Ayushman Bharat Mission, promotion of biotechnology, national health policy, and the National Digital Health Mission, among other technological initiatives. The pandemic was a stark reminder of the interconnections between health, economic growth, and development. The authors have cogently discussed the need for sustainable development policies that balance economic growth with collective well-being and environmental stewardship. This book can be a useful guide for those who seek to understand how the pandemic has transformed the world and the road ahead for India and the global community. Once again, I congratulate the authors on this wonderful book and look forward to its ideas being disseminated widely. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Sir. I now call upon our guest of honor, Shri Amitabh Kant. As India's G20 Sherpa, Shri Amitabh Kant is a governance reformer and public policy change agent for India. As a member of the Group of 20 G20 Forum, he has driven key reforms and initiatives during his tenure as the Chief Executive Officer of the Niti Aayog and Secretary of the Departmental for Industrial Policy and Promotion. He also has been a key driver of transformational national initiatives such as Startup India, Make in India, Incredible India, Kerala God's Own Country, and the Aspirational Districts Program, which have repositioned India and Kerala on the global stage. As the CEO of Niti Aayog, he has driven a vast range of national level developmental and policy initiatives which catalyze India's social and economic development. Oh, okay. All right. He's also written books and won a number of awards. Over to you.
I think the distinguished authors, Dr. Joseph Chalil, Professor Nalapad, and Mr. Pradeep Kapoor, the publisher, Mr. Nair, General U.K. Sharma, Mr. Supreet Singh, many distinguished people in the audience, Mrs. Lakshmi Puri, who's a very distinguished diplomat and a very distinguished writer, Professor Ruby Pavankar, our National Maritime Coordinator, Admiral Ashok Kumar, Mr. Alphonse, a former minister, many ambassadors who are here, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first compliment the publisher, the Konarak publisher, and the very distinguished authors whom I know very well. They have written an outstanding book, India Beyond the Pandemic, a sustainable path towards global quality healthcare. This pandemic was a once in a lifetime pandemic. And normally when pandemics of this nature happen, I think the world is confronted with several challenges. Challenges of healthcare, challenges of slowdown of growth, challenges of huge implications on the population. And I think more than anything else, the challenges of handling the pandemic itself. I think I was then the CEO of Niti Aayog, and I was center stage on many of these issues. I was chairing one of the empowered groups which was dealing with this issue of handling the crisis from a perspective of private sector, international partners, challenges of with all the civil society organizations. And let me say, first of all, that this pandemic in a vast and large country of this nature, which is bigger than 25 countries of Europe put together, has been handled in a very, very unique manner. First of all, the fact that we were able to vaccinate 2.2 billion people, do 2.2 billion vaccinations for our population, which was totally digital, which was paperless, cashless, and was totally digital, has not happened anywhere else in the world. I think this has been a remarkable feat. We were at one stage doing vaccination of 25 million per day. And that is like doing a vaccination for the whole population of Australia in one single day. That was the size and scale of what India achieved. And the fact is that this was all being done digitally on the CoWIN app. And therefore, the fact that we had leveraged technology in a very big way, both the Arogya Setu app and the CoWIN app were huge technological leapfrogging in many ways. Not merely leapfrogging, they were pole vaulting. And the fact that India was the only country which had done this digitally everywhere, across Europe, across America, it was all paperwork. India was the only country which had done this technologically in a digital manner. I think the second key aspect was that there were very few countries which were confronted with such a deadly second phase of that attack. Those of us who were here would recall that it was a very, very deadly second phase of the attack. And despite that, I think the country was able to keep down the lockdown period to a very minimal period. And therefore, we could revive our economy much quickly, much faster. And this was possible because the Prime Minister took the country into confidence, took the states into confidence, and it was a great effort of leadership, but it was also a great effort of cooperative federalism. I think that was the second great aspect of India's G20 handling, that it was cooperative federalism at its best during that period. Thirdly, I think there was a lot of innovation all through, from the not merely the fact that we were able to produce vaccine to such a large scale, that we could do a make in India during the COVID period and come out with vaccine during that period itself. Actually, at the onset of the COVID-19, India's ability to deal with the pandemic was questioned in a very big way. But what we could demonstrate that during this period, we could produce vaccines, not merely our own Make in India vaccine, but we could also do the AstraZeneca vaccine at such a large scale, to an extent where we could not merely vaccinate our own population, but the fact is that we were able to provide 300 million vaccines to over 100 countries. That demonstrates India's ability to do vaccine diplomacy. That demonstrates India's ability to think beyond India itself and look at the whole entire COVID from the perspective of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and from the perspective of one earth, one family, one future, and say that if there is COVID in one part of the world, it'll have an implication on other parts of the world. And therefore, it is necessary to have a global approach to vaccination. And therefore, to my mind, this was critical. I think the other aspect is that we've managed the COVID crisis in a very, very unique way. The economic handling of it, both the monetary handling of it and the fiscal handling of it, has been very unique. Unlike many other countries which gave out very large packages, if you look at Europe, if you look at America, if you look at UK, very large packages were given, which has led to inflation subsequently, and which has impacted actually other countries economically in other ways. But in India, our approach was a very targeted approach. And therefore, we ensured that while we did not give out large packages, but we ensured that everybody who was impacted could benefit. And therefore, we used the power of technology again, the direct benefit transfer, the digital public infrastructure, to push for direct benefit to over 80 crore people, 800 million people, to ensure that nobody would remain without food, nobody could remain without vaccination, and they would get benefit, and therefore money was put directly into the bank account without any leakages into the bank account of over 80 crore people. More than that, I mean, this means that almost about 33,000 crores of rupees was put into the bank account of the beneficiaries, and over 110 million women actually benefited from this. And therefore, we did not give out large-scale fiscal package, which did not lead to inflation. And therefore, ours was a very nuanced, ours was a very targeted approach. Ours was an approach which has enabled India to, again, get back post-COVID into a rapid utilization of our production facilities, and therefore revive our economy in a very big way. And I think what this demonstrates is our ability to drive capex in a number of sectors post-COVID period, and an infrastructure-led approach rather than a consumer-driven approach, because we were able to use the power of digital transfers and the power to use direct benefit transfer. And during the COVID period itself, we were constantly innovating. We were constantly modifying our approach. It was a very, very sophisticated approach to COVID handling, which few countries were able to do. I mean, just look at the approach which India pursued. Look at an approach of a complete close down, which China did for such a long period, all through the COVID period. And therefore, its impact of the COVID on the economy was much greater, much larger. And therefore, in managing the COVID period, I think what demonstrated India's approach was the fact that it could use the leverage technology in a very big way. And the pandemic also reaffirmed our strength in vaccine development, in manufacturing, the fact that we were able to develop Covaxin, bring it into the market, the fact that we were able to ensure that AstraZeneca partnered with Serum Institute to manufacture Covishield. All this was happening while actually developed countries were struggling to vaccinate their population. And India managed to administer about 2.2 billion doses in just about 18 months. And at our peak, as I said, that we were really ensuring that in partnership with the states, we could push this further. I think one of the key factors of this has been that we made COVID open source, and this enabled a lot of innovation to take place. We also invited many other countries to actually build their own solution on this digital public infrastructure of the COVID. And therefore, India has actually demonstrated to the world that we could partner other countries, and we could work with other countries, not only to provide vaccination, to provide technology to ensure that we could push for the digital public infrastructure, and also ensure that we could work in terms of very close coordinated. So it was an effort in terms of innovation. It was an effort in terms of management of health. It was an effort into handling diplomacy. It was an effort into looking after your own citizens. It was an effort into ensuring that technology could help us to leapfrog during this period. So this book is a tremendous effort because it contains several stories and insights from the front lines of the battle against COVID-19, and right from the policy decisions to implementation on the ground. This book takes a very multi-dimensional perspective of how India managed the pandemic, bringing together medical, technological, economic, and social dimension. It also takes a very forward-looking view on how primary healthcare systems can be reinvented, or how global organizations such as WHO can be retooled to better manage future crises. And it actually looks at a perspective of how the world can handle a future pandemic in a better manner. And therefore, this book actually serves as a great guide to our goal to build a more resilient society, one that is prepared for a future crisis. The lessons learned in India can actually be applied across the world, especially the developing world in particular. But more than that, to my mind, it has huge learning lessons for the developed world in terms of the leadership and how Prime Minister Modi handled this crisis in a multi-dimensional way. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate my friends, Dr. Joseph Chalil, who's the Chief Medical Officer of Novo Integrated Sciences. I would like to congratulate Professor Nalapad, whom I've known from my earlier days and as a Kerala cadre officer, and who remains a great intellectual, constantly debating on several issues of geopolitics. And I would like to compliment a great friend of mine, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, on whose request I've written the foreword of this book, but a remarkable piece on this has been written by Mr. Hardeep Puri. I read his piece, and it's a remarkable piece. So I think it's a great book. It has great learning lessons, and I think it's a must-buy book for all those who are interested in learning about how India managed this crisis. It's a book to be bought for learning on how crisis can be managed. It's a great book on how future pandemics can also be handled. So I take this opportunity to congratulate the authors, and I take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Nair for being such a forward-looking, progressive, and a dynamic publisher. Thank you. And to have such a distinguished list of authors to your publishing house.
Thank you.
It's a teamwork. But this appears to be a very Malayali-dominated enterprise. You as the publisher, Mr. Nalapad, and Mr. Joseph Chalil, all Malayalis. The only outlier seems to be Mr. Pradeep Kapoor.
Yeah, but
I'm a Haryanvi.
He speaks Malayalam now.
My election conference.
And your guest of honor is also hardcore Malayali. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Our next speaker today is Professor Ruby Pavankar. She's the Executive Director and immediate past President, Asia Pacific Association of Allergy, Asthma, and Clinical Immunology. She has served as a president of multiple World Allergy Organization and has been a professor, Department of Pediatrics at the Nippon Medical School in Tokyo, and at many other honorary places in Japan, China, and Taiwan. I will not go into greater details, but will now invite her to connect with us virtually. Over to you, ma'am. Professor Ruby Pavankar.
Thank you very much for having me here. I'm sorry that I could not be there in person, but I'm very happy to join you virtually. My greatest regards to Amitabh Kantji, the G20 Sherpa, and all our authors, Dr. Joe Chalil, Ambassador Kapoor, who's together with me virtually, and Professor M.D. Nalapat, my colleague, Dr. Sharma, and distinguished members of the audience. My heartiest congratulations go to Dr. Joe Chalil, Ambassador Kapoor, and Professor Nalapat for this excellent book on India Beyond the Pandemic, which stands as a valuable text in understanding the intricate dynamics of global health through the lens of India's robust response to COVID-19 crisis. I am pleased to have been able to write a testimonial for this, and I'm really believe that this book delves into India's commendable vaccination drive and humanitarian vaccine diplomacy, highlighting the nation's vital role on the world's stage during the unprecedented times. As we all know that healthcare workers form the front line of public health and the core of any public health issue, be it chronic diseases, be it infectious diseases, be it climate-associated public health challenges, or dealing with pandemic. The book is a narrative of the resilience shown by healthcare workers and the technological innovation during a health crisis. It serves as a fantastic guidepost for developing resilient systems equipped for both acute and chronic health challenges and addresses the need for systemic health reforms while recognizing India's potential ascendancy in global healthcare leadership, which you very elegantly heard from Amitabh Kantji. This is a key resource for adaptability, scientific progression, and equitable healthcare strategies for the future of universal healthcare. Having said this, I would also like to say that India's stage post the pandemic, as you can see, that India held the G20 presidency in 2023 under the leadership of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji and his global action on lifestyle for environment under the leadership of our G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant. The G20 presidency was an outstanding success with all the 20 countries unanimously accepting the New Delhi Declaration. And I'm really happy to say that, having said that, the declaration itself highlights importance of global health policies and public health initiatives, as well as implementing of the One Health. Talking of One Health, again highlights the impact of this book because it shows how we live with our environment. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or One Earth, One Family, One Future, is actually embedded into this One Health and the planetary health or climate mitigation. So I would like to say that this book serves as an important, valuable tool for understanding what India has done, what India can do, and what we need to further achieve through making certain policy changes and making certain reforms that would make India stand top in the leadership of healthcare. And as we all know, the COVID-19 taught us a very good lesson. When we talk about GDP, COVID-19 was the biggest hit on GDP. And how many of us think of health? When we think of health, we also need to think of mental health. And that is so important. And that embeds what we call as planetary health. We need to save the planet, and to save the planet and to save human health, we need to save the planet. And I say it again. So congratulations again to our wonderful authors. And I'm looking forward to the deliberations in the panel discussions.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And hopefully next time you can join us in person. Our next speaker today is Lieutenant General Dr. Umesh Kumar Sharma. He's a retired medical army officer and recipient of the Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, specializing in nephrology with a focus on preventing chronic kidney disease. Sir, you'll have to let me do my job. Everyone is in a hurry, but I have to do my job and follow protocols. Throughout his distinguished service spanning over 38 years, he has served in various capacities, including as the President's Honorary Surgeon and Commandant and the Director of the prestigious Army Hospital, Referral and Research in New Delhi. He has contributed to over 1,000 renal transplants. There's more, but I shall stop here. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. No, I'm sure the audience didn't want to hear all of that. Well, dignitaries on the dais and all the esteemed guests, at the outset, I consider it a singular honor to be here on the invitation of Mr. Nair and through the very kind this thing of Admiral Ashok Kumar, I think, who thought of me to be here. I mean, this book, my wife would tell you, when it came to me for a review, I finished reading it in one single go. It took me a little less than 24 hours, and I actually read it from cover to cover. I was curious. I heard that the book is about beyond the pandemic, means the pandemic has happened, and now what are we going to look forward to? And it's been written by three different authors, each a stalwart in his field. One, a medical professional, one, a statesman and a diplomat, and the third, a deep thinker and a professor. I wondered how the book has been put together, whether they've written individual essays and strung them together. To my utter surprise, I found that it's a seamless writing by the three of them. You can make out who would have contributed what, but it is not disparate essays. It's one beautifully flowing text, and it was eminently enjoyable going through that for two reasons. In spite of all the problems that the pandemic brought to our country, in spite of some challenges which looked unsurmountable to begin with, India comes out on top, as Mr. Amitabh Kant just finished telling you, for the very deft handling of this pandemic in the overall scenario. We did have our problems, and the authors have beautifully pointed out what we went through to begin with, where we were making our mistakes. We overcame them all, and we actually led the way for the rest of the globe. So, I mean, it was a pleasure to celebrate that through this book. But we couldn't be possibly be resting on our laurels, because the book's title is Beyond the Pandemic. So we have to look beyond it. So I looked for what all the authors have proposed in this. And like I said, after having shown us that our administrators, our healthcare professionals, every single citizen of this country, under the guidance of the Government of India, its executive officers, and the Honorable Prime Minister, actually put the shoulder to the wheel and brought the chariot called India out of this muck. We saw what havoc the pandemic created to our education, to our economy, to our social fabric, to our very lives. And in a very short period of time, we actually managed to beat the pandemic, come out of this mess. The second wave has been beautifully referred to in the book. It was a terrible time indeed. We overcame even that kind of a madness in this country. And so my chest swelled with pride, because we were also part of that effort as healthcare professionals. A lot of my colleagues whom I personally known, nurses as well as doctors, were actually lost to this pandemic. And I say a silent prayer in their memory, but with their efforts and with the effort of an average citizen of India, we managed to beat the thing. So we can all be proud of that fact. And the book brings it out beautifully. But far more importantly, what this book tells us is what needs to be done in future, what can be achieved, and how India can lead the globe in its quest for sustainable, good quality healthcare. And those lessons are the ones that a serious student of public health should imbibe from this book. It's a must read for those people as well as policy planners and even government departments. And I keep hearing this particular Sanskrit word wrongly pronounced, of course. It's Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, because Vasudha is earth. And they all say Vasudev, who was actually Krishna's. So it is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We showed the world how actually the world is one family. And that was marvelous. My pet chapter in the book is chapter 9, Reinventing the Primary Healthcare. And here I must put in a word for Armed Forces Medical Services, which I served for 38.5 years after having passed out of Armed Forces Medical College. So if you add those 4.5 years to that, you will get 42.5 years of association with Armed Forces. We have a beautiful healthcare model in Armed Forces. Admiral Ashok Kumar would gladly tell you, our absolutely basic medical unit is called an MI room even today. An MI room stands for Medical Inspection Room. It means not necessarily the person who reports there is sick, but is examined in order to look for problems and in order to give him preventive health care. Armed forces believe that treatment is not enough. What is far, far more important is to prevent diseases. Secondly, we have such a well-oiled healthcare system where we have these MI rooms and then we have primary care hospitals, which are small, tiny hospitals, often less than 150 beds, and often with only medical officers or one odd medical specialist, a specialist. If the patient cannot be managed there at armed forces expense, up the chain, he is referred to a secondary care hospital, which has at least 6 basic specialties specialists: surgeon, physician, gynecologist, pediatrician, the radiologist and the pathologist. So he can get better care at the secondary care. If he cannot be managed at secondary care hospital, he is transferred to a tertiary care hospital, which is also called a command hospital, because it has multiple super specialty officers posted in there. And finally comes quaternary care. I was fortunate to command Army Hospital Referral and Research at Delhi. It's a quaternary care facility. All the command hospitals of Indian Armed Forces transfer their cases here if they cannot manage them. And all of this is done by the armed forces. So it's a beautiful, seamless system. And this is what is argued in reinventing our primary health care. That basic touch of a general, doctor at the root level is so important, is not happening these days. People come with about 25 investigations and ask for a gastroenterologist, a cardiologist. I want to see a urologist, having met nobody else. So that is not exactly the way to provide sustainable, good quality health care. So I, in fact, implore our planners to study the armed forces model and try and apply that to the rest of the country. In conclusion, actually, our master compere has already chanted that Sanskrit shloka. Armed Forces Medical Services have a motto, again in Sanskrit, beyond Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and that is Sarve Santu Niramaya. May all be free of disease. That is what the armed forces strive to do through preventive care more than therapeutic care, through treatment. And if the world did not divide itself with artificial boundaries, if we really cooperated, the globe, the earth can actually attain the goal of Sarve Santu Niramaya, where all will be disease-free someday. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, sir. Very inspiring. Spoken as somebody who has on the ground experience of what all is involved in healthcare. So I think there's a lot to be learned from the experience of people like him. Thank you once again. And thank you for correcting the Sanskrit pronunciation. I shall remember that. With that, our next introduction is going to be the moderator for our panel today, Mr. Supreet Singh. He's the Director of Psychocare Health Private Limited. He's a celebrated and award-winning entrepreneur with a bachelor's in electronics and communication engineering and diploma in broadcasting and performing arts from Columbia Academy, Vancouver. So he's obviously multifaceted. And Psychocare Health Private Limited is a testimony to his vision and his leadership, and has been in existence since 2013. And he's, like Mr. Nair said, doing multiple other things. But really over to you, sir, to moderate this session with our speakers and panelists.
Sure, thank you. Shall I take the dais?
Sure.
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. And it's an honor being here and moderating such eminent personalities and being among such great personalities over here. The aura is amazing over here. So for me, I feel that the journey for me in healthcare has just begun, but there's a long way to go. Over the years, I just, before starting, I just want to give a brief about how my journey in healthcare started. So I was living in Canada, loving my broadcasting thing. One sudden day, I interviewed a business analyst, and he told me that, what are you doing here if you think of going into healthcare? This is the time to be in India. And it was 2012. Today, it's a testimony, and I see that. And the way India has grown and the way India is going to grow in the global healthcare platform is going to be humongous. And I think we all are here and celebrating this book. It's a testimony to that. So thank you for listening to my words. What I personally feel over the years, what has happened is we have been very casual about health. I'm audible to you, sir and ma'am?
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes,
Very
yes,
clear.
yes, you are very clear.
So what I'm going to keep my questions candid. I host a podcast and that's candid, so I'm used to being candid. So what I've realized over the years that we have never been very concerned about our health, preventive health. So it's always been कुछ होने के बाद ही हम कुछ करते हैं. So it's been always like that. Since COVID has happened, now we are getting concerned about health, preventive health. So I want your take. Have we really learned from the COVID, or still we are living in the dark? So maybe, probably.
Well, it's very difficult not to learn from COVID, because I do believe all of us were struck by the impact of COVID. And I think you're quite right, Supreet. You put your finger on the most important thing, which is essentially that India has 1.4 billion healthcare providers. If you talk, for example, of a family, you talk, for example, of a sister or a mother or a daughter, and the way she looks after her family, the way she ensures nutrition, the way she ensures a better life. I think that is a very big step towards what was very correctly being said by the distinguished doctor here. And we have some common friends. I'm not going to talk about that now, but some other people who respect. Thank you very much. But all I can say is, Supreet, it's very important to make healthcare part of primary education, part of the socialization, part of the way parents educate their children, children educate their friends. It's very important to understand that healthcare is not just for the expert. Again, apologies to the expert here and to two experts here. Joe is also an expert. It's for all of us. And we're all, in a sense, part of the healthcare system. And I think that is what COVID taught us, that any single link in that chain, and it's a huge link of hundreds of millions of links in terms of people, any small link can basically, destroy a huge swath of social, stability. So I think that is very important. The second is, those who have got a feeling that, the so-called the global South, well, I mean, it's where it is. it can't be more than what it is not really capable of doing very well. Well, I'd like to say that the doctors from India who have gone to the United States lifted the reputations of all of us. I remember a time when immigration officers in the United States, customs and whatever, would look at me, look a bit down at me because I am Indian. But lo and behold, when a huge number of Indian doctors landed there, that changed to great respect, tremendous respect. And I think, the fastest, our people are shown you can use tech in more than 1 billion people. They pick it up very quickly. And the important, therefore, is to provide them with the tech. For example, some of us have talked about a laptop with every school, with every student. Because I've seen for myself, for example, schools in the most disadvantaged areas of the country, you give them a laptop, you give them access to the internet, and in a matter of weeks, they pick up what students who have got much better advantages economically cannot pick up in months. And some of them cannot pick up in years. So I think, Supreet, the point is, first, fast tracking of health. The entire population of the planet, all 8 billion of us plus, can do it if we try and if we believe we can do it. And secondly, we're all healthcare providers. And I think that's also the lesson which our distinguished doctor colleague told us about, this question of investigation coming to the picture. And I must confess that all of us have been guilty about getting a battery of tests done and then going to a specialized person. I must say, the next time I do that, I'll know I'm doing something wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to know about your opinion, Dr. Ruby. What I've realized, like over the years, I just want to add one point, what sir has mentioned. There's a term called as holistic health, which has recently come up like really fast. But people are, what I personally feel is people are not able to understand what holistic health is. If you can put some light on that and your opinion on preventive health as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, this is exactly what I was trying to briefly say in the limited time that I had in my introduction. So I was rushing up with things and I couldn't really elaborate on it. And what I try to say is that holistic health is a component of the human, animal, and environment. It's all put together. We live in one harmony, and it's very important that the human health can never exist in isolation. And the COVID-19 or zoonotic diseases like that are a huge example of why they happen, because we are causing a dysbiosis, a disharmony in our very existence with the environment. And that's why the planetary health is very important for human health when we talk about preventive medicine or preventative strategies. So preventative strategies is not only about making the people aware of the diseases or going just to a private, a general practitioner, but it's way before that. Things start in the mother's womb, what we know as the microbiome, which is present in the gut and which is important for immune health, which keeps our body healthy, this basic immune health. That happens even in the mother's womb. So the maternal nutrition, the environment the mother is exposed to, the children early years of life, the food they eat, the environment, the soil, water, air pollution, everything together, composite, makes a big difference. The loss of biodiversity that we see, that also has a huge impact. Mental health is completely ignored. And mental health, you see forest fires, you see the rise in temperatures that are happening everywhere. All these things affect. So our health cannot be prevented by just giving a recipe and saying, okay, this is how you prevent health. It has to have all these composites together to be able to achieve that kind of, and in holistic health, I would also like to say our traditional medicine like Ayurveda is also something that we should take into consideration. And then we have, of course, the fact that we have to get this, as already mentioned by Professor Nalapat, that we have to bring it to the 1.4. Everyone is a healthcare provider because the mother is the first healthcare provider. She's the one who educates the child. She's the one who see. So right at that grassroots levels, things have to change. Even when we talk about climate mitigation, even when we talk about planetary health, governments can make policy. The G20 can make a recommendation. The P20 can try to implement it. In Singapore, they have legislations that you're fined if you do something against the, but that is not enough until civil society takes responsibility, understands it. So awareness is very important at grassroots level. Digitalization to make people, just as was mentioned about computers and everything being available. So digitalization to be everything is accessible. Harmonization is very important because when we talk globally, we have different standards. DC in India, FDA is different, EMA is different, PMDA in Japan is different. We need a harmonization of that. So there are multiple levels of this, and we need to put those all different blocks together to be able to achieve that. And it's not something we can achieve overnight or in a few months, but I think with India's leadership and with its power of the healthcare providers, its power of technology, its power of digitalizing, its power of telemedicine, of AI, all put together, India can lead. As is mentioned in the book, India can lead. And that's what I think we should do.
Thank you so much. And that's provocative. I feel similar ways that if technology is embedded with the awareness, the people need to be aware, and it has to start from the civil lives, that from the womb it starts itself. Thank you so much, Dr. Ruby. And I have a small question, Ambassador, that I personally feel that food should be a part of healthcare. And we talk about the food the least. It's more about the taste than healthcare. Like, for example, milk were an integral part of Indian healthcare system, and we were all healthy, I think, in a way. So how can food be a preventive part of health, and how can we change the dynamics, the paradigm?
Thank you very much, Supreet-ji. It's indeed such a great pleasure for me to be participating in the session, even though it's only virtually. I wish I'd been able to come there in person and interact with all of you and meet up with a lot of my friends who are there today. But I look forward to doing that in the near future. Now, also, before I talk about food being an essential part of well-being and wellness and physical health and mental health, what I'd like to say that it has been such a great pleasure for me to listen to some of the distinguished panelists and speakers, including General Sharma, who spoke from his heart, my dear friend Amitabh Kant, whom I've known for a very long time, who agreed to write the preface and to participate in this event today. Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, who's been my mentor and guide and friend since the day I joined the service, and whom I have a lot of respect for. And of course, Professor Ruby Pavankar, whom I look forward to meeting someday, Professor Madhav Das Nalapat, who's one of the most distinguished people we have in India in terms of thought leadership. So, and amongst many of the others also there. But what I would like to say about food is that, food is definitely a very important part of the framework and construct of every individual being. Now, we have been told by our ancestors, by our parents, by the gurus, that sattvic living, sattvic food for a sattvic life. There are different types of food: sattvic food, rajasic food, and mansic food. And I do not want to get into the details of that because I do not want to offend my friends who go beyond the vegetarian, diet. But sattvic food basically consists of the plant-based diet. And a friend of ours, we live in Washington, D.C. currently. She recently wrote a very eminent book, which is called Healthy Food for Happy Living, for a Happy Life. Now, she talks about Ayurvedic cooking, Ayurvedic food. How the Ayurvedic path, Ayurveda has shown the paths to healthy living in terms of having a healthy physical existence, having a healthy mental existence, and being able to surmount diseases and challenges to mental and physical health. So the world has to also sort of start appreciating this a little more and come back to the basic grassroots. The pandemic has, of course, impacted our lives in very profound ways. I was impacted very personally because some of our closest friends, were sacrificed to the pandemic. And that got us thinking as to how we can work together. And I thank my dear friend, Dr. Joseph Chalil, for working together with me on the first book, which actually became an Amazon bestseller in two categories, healthcare and public policy. And also became one of the 20 best reads in the world on the pandemic recently. And also this second book, which has come out on this area, this is my 8th book in person, but the second book on the pandemic, which has also become a Amazon bestseller in 3 categories during the pre-launch. Therapeutic care is also required, but what is much more required is basic well-being and wellness. And how do we focus on that? Through meditation, through yoga, through diet, through exercise. So diet becomes a very important part of daily living. I personally am a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian all my life, since my birth actually. And that has stood me in very good stead. Even at my age, with the amount of Kriya and yoga that I do not feel one bit my age. I feel a lot younger, and I feel I can continue to contribute a lot more significantly to society, to community, and to the world. Now, from that perspective, to have a little more emphasis on the diet, I think you have made a very good point, Supreet. We should have given it a little more prominence in the book, and we will keep that in mind in the future, because we do look forward to having a lot more discussions about the pandemic, about the book, about the contents, about the future, and about having more interactions about the contents of the book also when I'm next in India with various groups. So the other part which I would like to mention here, Supreet, is that it has been an inflection point in many ways at different levels. When I look at it from a perspective here, sitting in Washington, D.C., and looking at the world, looking at India, looking at the other countries, what do I see? That this was a transformational journey for India also, internally and globally. It has emerged on the global stage as a real Vishwa Guru, as a guru in the truest sense of the term. Because in the West, what I saw was a very transactional approach, a very commercial attitude and outlook. Even for selling vaccines to other countries, they wanted their price. Even the way they were bargaining with India initially, before India embarked on its own path to discover a new way of doing things for the world and for itself. And the vaccine war, that way, is a very outstanding movie, and I would recommend it very highly. But I would also say that certain countries like China had a very dubious role to play in this entire scenario, whereas India emerged as a country which not only did a lot of good to its own citizens, but did a lot of good to the poor and developing or least developed countries of the world by providing vaccines free to them, by looking after their healthcare needs. And we have been doing that in medicines and pharma, as you know very well, compared to all of us, because we have been in this field now for such a long time. So I do look forward to the scenario where India continues on this path and becomes the leading healthcare provider. India is the largest population, 1.4 billion people, number 1 country in the world, more population than the entire Western world put together, or the entire continent of Africa put together, or the Americas put together. And our rural population itself is about 900 million people, 897 million people. Now, that population again is more than the continents put together, whether it's Africa or Europe or Americas. So if you have to cater only for the rural population of India, which I want to emphasize is another very important segment which we are working very closely with in India with the governments of Madhya Pradesh and Himachal Pradesh and also with Gujarat. So those sort of initiatives are very, very essential in healthcare. How do we recast the ground level scene in terms of not getting into the transactional and commercial approach, like Professor Nala has also mentioned that one of the delivery systems which is very wanting is the system in America in terms of the costs and benefits associated with it. And how do we now leverage the advances in technology in Industry 5.0, Industry 4.0, and make it more human centric and for the benefit of everybody by using AR, VR, MR, the different sorts of realities, machine learning, data analytics, cloud, quantum computing. How do we leverage those advances in technology to make healthcare, well-being, wellness, and thereafter treatment accessible to all at a very low cost, which is affordable for all? Thank you. Back to you, Supreet.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for your insights.
If I could,
You've kind of summed up a lot of things with the vegetarian diet. Even I'm struggling right now. I try, but still a battle I'm trying to win. Uh, if we talk about uh, General Sharma, sir, I I'm so much intrigued by the workings of the defense forces. I've cleared SSB once. I couldn't join for some reasons, but I'm so passionate about the defense forces and how they operate. So, as you mentioned that you have primary, secondary, tertiary, and then the stepwise, and there is a medical inspection room, which is actually not a reality in the normal lives or in the normal world outside of the defense forces. The idea is great if it can be inculcated in the mainstream, but what's the any roadmap you can share? Like what's in your mind, how it can be done?
No, what it probably requires is a tremendous amount of discipline. Now, an armed forces officer, once he joins, the young medical officer, he's posted to the absolutely the periphery, the Bonduks, where there are times when he doesn't even have people to socially interact with. He may be all by himself, some border areas. Try and post an MBBS doctor from a civil medical college to his own state's rural health service. He pays out, he bribes, he does all kinds of things. He pays the bond money, but does not go to that primary health center.
Very true.
It's a bit of a shock. Here we don't have a choice. If you join the armed forces, you're ordered to go somewhere, you go there. Right. So basically, essentially, it requires that kind of a discipline. After more than 75 years of our independence, the government of India has not been able to ensure adequate health coverage for its rural population in terms of primary health care. So there are primary health centers, but without doctors, without paramedicals, without staff. They all want to stay in the cities. So it requires an attitudinal sea change actually in India, but it can be done. The pandemic showed us, because when it became an emergency, everybody pitched in. Everybody pitched in. It doesn't happen in normal course of events. So we need to attitudinally change ourselves. That's what I mean. And it's a big ask. It'll take probably decades, not years, decades. But it can be done, you just need the resolve. You just need to find ways. That's it.
So one more thing I would want your opinion on that. There's a sometimes, like, we are in a city right now. When we go 50 kilometers to a village, there's a huge difference in the 50 meters itself. And most of the people, again, as you mentioned, come to the. Can telemedicine somehow help in that way?
Oh, the book has very beautifully covered this topic. And the world over, the modern trend is into telemedicine. In fact, because Mr. Amitabh Kant told you, leveraging technology to provide adequate health care. Telemedicine would be a huge, huge boon. It just has to be effectively put in place. That's all. And it is being done in India now. I myself, on a given day, attend to some 15 odd telemedicine calls. Of course, in my specialty, people consult me only for nephrological problems because it's not always easy to land up with a nephrologist. But the fact is, telemedicine will help. You would believe me that uh, an ECG recorded in a peripheral rural primary health center can be transmitted through telemedicine to the top cardiologist who can give you the diagnosis, who can suggest, please evacuate him to the city of Bangalore because we need to change his heart valve. So that is the great boon that telemedicine can bring in. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that. Dr. Charil, over to you.
So you can invest in telemedicine.
So we already associated with one the same. They're doing great work in rural India.
Yeah, I mean, if
You wanted to say something, ma'am? Yes, please.
no, I was just saying that, telemedicine is now being done, I mean, in many places in India, of course, as Mr. Kant mentioned, but I said telemedicine as well. AI is very important. I think AI now is being adopted in many places, even for radiological diagnosis, but of course, we need to have multiple layers for it. We need to have policies to ensure the security of it, the correctness of it. All those things need to be put in place. But I think AI and digitalization, which is also put as part of the G20 recommendations of India. So I think if we move forward in that direction and getting it to right to the grassroots level in the villages, I think that is very important. And addressing that, just wanted to make a statement about what Ambassador just mentioned about affordability. And I think that financial sustainability is most important. Whenever we bring these kind of new technologies and new things, being able for India to lead globally, it should be made financially sustainable to the providers as well as to the patients. I think that's another thing we need to really work on, and that requires public-private partnerships and international collaborations of the government and other institutions like IIT or other medical institutions like AFMC and so on, with international institutions and organizations to make this happen. But that's a very strong possibility. And it's happening in many ways, like nanotechnology and all is with IIT and institutions in Japan. It's happening quite often.
As it's well mentioned in the book, it should be a sustainable model. And first of all, congratulations for being Amazon bestseller already on day one. It's a great achievement. And Dr. Chalil, we have discussed about preventive health many times and how India is leading in terms of healthcare, in terms of multiple things, even pharmaceuticals in multiple facets. How do you see India as the epicenter for healthcare in the next 10 years from a global perspective?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for everyone for coming in and making this a very good success. As Supreet just mentioned, this book went on sale globally today, already became a bestseller in 3 categories. In fact, the number 1 and number 2 in some categories are the books paperback versus the hardback. So thank you, KPR and his team. So I don't think it has happened ever that the same book in 3 versions have become 1, 2, and 3. It's competing with its own. So, hey, but it's a loaded question what you mentioned. And so, there's 2 aspects of it. Number 1 is what we see India as in the future in the next 2 decades. A lot of crazy ideas. Some of them are mentioned in the book. There are some which are not mentioned in the book. Maybe I would rather mention which are not in the book, because the book, what you can already read, you don't need to repeat what's already in the book. One thing which we want to talk about is that, again, the whole purpose is that, as General Sharma mentioned, as Dr. Bhavankar mentioned, is that we need to move away from this. We call it healthcare. Everybody claim healthcare. Are we really caring about people's health? as a doctor, am I really worried about is my patient working out or stop smoking or not drinking or eating right or exercising versus am I just fixing a disease? So I would rather call it a disease care system where you come in with a sickness, I fix you, I send you back, I cure your disease, and then you come back again with another disease, I charge you money more, or I put a stent in you, or I treat your diabetes, but we're not really caring about healthcare. So I think it's a good marketing that we call it healthcare. We're not really doing it, So it is not an India problem. The same thing happens in USA, where it's a much more larger, costly affair. We fix diseases, we send you back, you come back. They have made some rules that you can't come back in 30 days. So they'll make sure that you stay at home for 30 days. But then the 31st day, you come back with the same disease. We'll admit you back again, and we'll bill you for the same thing. We'll in the differences, we'll bill the insurance company, and then we'll send you back. So this like a catch where everybody's minting money. A patient is not better off.
Yeah, in India they call it hafta.
It's again, I don't want to call any bad names and get in trouble with it.
It's not a bad name.
No, actually, that is Indian not. Hafta means really weekly.
Okay.
Nothing bad.
So if we can move away from our disease care system and get into a true healthcare system, we can design it. Great. So coming back to the India's role, another challenge which we don't talk about in the book enough is that there is a global human resource shortage in healthcare coming up in the next decade. So America will be short of over 100,000 doctors, UK, Germany, France, Europe, Australia will be short of physicians, nurses, health middle providers. The challenge will not just be that their population is aging and their doctors are retiring. So there's two, I would say, well-planned events, which is predictably happening very soon in the next 5-6 years or so, where I would say India might be the only country which can solve. And that's where technology comes in. I see a way where we did telemedicine or back-end office help desk 1-800 numbers when people are calling help desk in Dell or Comcast or whatever it might be. The calls were routed to India, 10, 20 years ago. Of course, now it's routed to other countries because India has become more expensive. But I see the same way India will become the telemedicine or primary care hub of the world. So I wouldn't be surprised if you would see a call center of, let's say, 500 to 1,000 doctors sitting in a hall in Bangalore, with cameras, with screens, which have IoTs, internet operated devices. Like, for example, my watch can now take ECGs. It can measure my blood oxygen level. It can measure my temperature. So these can be transferred, as General mentioned, to any doctor anywhere in the world easily, and I can be monitored remotely. The blood sugar can be monitored remotely. Your blood pressure can easily be monitored remotely. So it is going to happen that the triaging, the selecting of the patients early on, like who needs to be seen to a specialist, who need to be seen, by a specialty clinics or transported to a hospital, might be done by Indian doctors sitting in. All we need to do is to, work with the training of the doctors, make sure they are trained internationally, make sure they are trained in languages, which is, English, German, France, whichever might be with French. So this is going to happen. I'm not sure any other country can handle this volume of healthcare. So that's one thing and then the second thing is how AI, we're talking about not just language learning modules, we're talking about language action models, which could then automatically detect these are the patients who require consultations, and then deciding on which treatments need to be done, which doctor need to be referred to. So without even any human doctor interface. So this is going to happen in the next 5-6 years. And the challenge is, are we ready for it? Is the system in India ready for it? Are our education systems ready for it? Now, how do we combine our medical schools with our IITs, with our IIMs, making sure our doctors are not just medically taught, but they're technologically savvy. They know how to manage a system. They know how to speak languages. So we have to make them better doctors going forward. I would even say, like we always had dual education system in the country, like the state syllabus and the CBSE or ICSE. We might even need to start, training international doctors in these countries, in our own medical schools. Maybe train them in MD programs like in the US or in Europe. So I'm a very bullish person on India leading the world in healthcare. There is no other option. There is no other country available. So we would be dependent, and the world will be dependent on India. So it's up to India to provide the services with technology, with AI, with our human resource capital, the smartest people in the world we have here. We need to use them. And I'm pretty sure sitting in America, I can clearly see that our system is declining. I don't see the next decades belong to America. I would say the next decades belong to India.
Wow.
Dr. Pawar,
Yes, sorry.
No, I just want to add to what Dr. Chalil was saying.
Yes.
Now, take, for example, Japan. It's an aging society. They need carers. You have in Europe, many countries, and they're not finding them. And you need doctors, and you're not finding them. Now, the point is, yes, we have the potential, the human potential. And I mean, I personally, Dr. Chalil, Ambassador, we've all seen that personally when we visit these places, how quickly people learn. But the point is, it requires, like, for example, a jewel. It looks like a stone, quite ordinary. And then you push, and it becomes a jewel, the very precious jewel. So we have hundreds of millions of very precious jewels. And the question is ensuring through the education system, through the nurture system, through the various other value and other kind of chains, that we transform them into the jewels that they actually are.
Very true. Dr. Pavankar, you want to add something here, please? You're on mute. You need to unmute, ma'am.
Sorry, I keep doing that. I really echo what Professor Nalapat said, and it's in fact, that was something I was trying to raise, that for example, India is now like a really young population, very, very young population. 20 to 30 years from now, we'll see things change in India. And there are two things. That one is India needs to be prepared for itself. That's number one. Secondly, firstly, of course, India can provide to the rest of the world. And secondly, India needs to prepare for itself. Because I have been here now 34 years in Japan, and I have seen what's happening, the aging population and the lack of people in work, this thing. So we will have to prepare a situation where there is a concept of health and prevention, that they don't have to face these chronic diseases as they grow older. So in imbibing that thing of nutrition, of the value of healthy food, healthy work, life balance, sleep is so important. Exercise is so important. If you look at the kids today, they're with the iPads and this thing, they don't go out and play. So all this thing has to be brought into the nuclear aspect of a family through a mother. So the education starts there and the health starts there. That's one. And the respect for the environment, these two things. The other thing is, like, when we talk about the aging population, the lack of this, we are already importing nurses from India and from other Vietnam and other countries, because we have less people in that level of, not so much in the level of doctors yet, but that is again a thing that's going to happen. So India should be prepared to provide to the rest of the world, as Dr. Chalil and everybody just mentioned. And secondly, India has to prepare for itself. And that's why I think one is technology, and the other is affordability, and the third is trying to create awareness of the importance of what is health. And again, I repeat again, like a broken record, that when we talk about health, mental health is very, very important. People ignore the impact of mental health on physical health.
That's very true. And the brain drives the entire body.
Absolutely.
So that's very right. Mr. Nair, I want your opinion in a way, like as a patient, if you would say, 10 years before or 10 years today, how have the things changed when you go to a hospital or when you go to a doctor? If you can share that perspective as well, because that is also required.
First of all, I am not sick.
Always jovial, and you have a great sense of humor.
Me, so I enjoy. So I am not sick. But anyway, I really someday I'm sick also. But as I said, you go, the first thing they said, take an MRI. Yeah, MRI. and they see the MRI and they say, oh, it's all aging factor. There is nothing wrong. Then I'm aging. And I also know I'm getting aged. But anyway, I'm a great believer of Ayurveda. In my own life, at the age of 8, I was to die. But I would not have been here. Okay? I was to die. Only Ayurveda helped me. When I was 8, when I say which year, then you will count my age. I don't want to say. But at that time, there was no medicine for tuberculosis. There was no medicine for typhoid. My mother died when I was 7 because of typhoid. And she could not get a medicine. We tried to get even from Mumbai. We couldn't get in Kerala. So there was no medicine, allopathy medicine, in those years. And my mother died at the age of 27. Her 27 years, right? Now, I had the same day or same week, serious jaundice. No medicine for jaundice. Even today, there is no medicine for jaundice. I'm telling you, I can prove it. And luck was there. I had to leave. And so somebody just passed. Thanks to yes, and thanks to army. One army man was just going through my house, and there were about 30, 40 people in our house. Who is going to die first, my mother or myself? That was the question. Both are ready to die. She from typhoid, I am from jaundice. All this, my nails, everything was yellow color, totally yellow. And this man was just passing. Was an army man came on a leave and, applying, showing his body, applying oil and all. He was going to take his bath in a small river. He said, why this crowd? So they said, mother and son both are sick. People are waiting to see who is going to die first. So he said, what's the problem? He said, the one is suffering from this. So jaundice, there is medicine. You have a paddy field, the medicine is there. Why you can't pluck that and then give it to him? So nobody said anything. He came. He was going to the bath. He said, call my mother's sister. Said, go and pluck this. That is what I think Dr. Sharma said. And and I was given, but he told me that if you want to live, then the whole thing you have to take it inside and keep it for half an hour. You start omitting and all, but don't omit if you want to live. After this, I'll give you the whole, whatever you want, whatever food you want, I'll give you. Typical Kerala style, I want a lot of fry items. And that was all denied for 1 month. So he told my aunt, prepare the meal for him. After half an hour, if he is not bringing it out, prepare everything and I would like to sit with him and eat. And he went for his bath. He came back after 45 minutes. The food was ready and I ate and I became all right, I'm alive. This happened to me. And another disease, I would say, another problem I have, no medicine those days in allopathy, and that was treated by only testing my nabi, the center portion of your body, which I don't think any allopathy doctor look at it. When I went for allopathy treatment, nothing happened. I couldn't go to school. I was in 10th class. So finally, this Vaidya we call Christian, he was a Christian, but following Ayurveda. As soon as I went to him, he did not look usually they look at this nadi, He said, no, open your half pant and let me see your nabi. And he said, it's all heated up. You have inherent problem. And then my uncle told all the problems which I had when I was born. Okay, nobody knew that. He immediately gave me for 1 anna, that those days it was anna. I don't know what is the amount today, 1 anna. He said, go and buy this herb and usko jo bhi karna hai, doodh ke saath. On the 5th day, I became all right. And no medicine in allopathy at that time again. So I'm a great believer of Ayurveda. Even today, I believe in Ayurveda. But I have a lot of doctors like Sharma, my friends. Theology. I have all kinds of people. And one doctor oncologist sitting there. Dr. Jain is my dear friend. So all that is there. But I believe, in Ayurveda. 100% I believe in it. So it cured me.
Success story.
Yes, thank you.
So the change, that is the change.
Actually, we need a holistic approach towards healthcare. This is what I feel. Everything goes side by side. It's a pleasure. Sorry.
I think one of the things in India, I mean, Ayurveda has a very important place, and I think that's being now recognized even by the World Health Organization, and there are actually institutes being created. The most important thing also is that research, and I forgot to mention that not just for Ayurveda. I think we need to have more scientific research and science-based solutions to many of the things that we are talking about. And for that, we need to bring that into, it's not research and innovation only from drugs or devices or something, but also in the basic system of our education, which is what we have in US and we have in Japan. We have something like when medical doctors graduate, they also are trained to do their doctorates, which is partly clinical and partly research. And I think that is missing in India. And we really need to bring that into the curriculum, which will make people think. Because when I was a fellow, I was taught when a patient comes to you and you find two people who respond differently, you think why? That why should give the question for your basis of your research. And then you create the methodology and then you take it forward. And that's how many of the new therapies have come. That's how personalized medicine has come today. And Ayurveda, for that matter, in a way, is personalized medicine. So I think research is very important, be it in Ayurveda, or it should be there in our medical system, and scientific innovation will come from that kind of a system that's very much within our healthcare agenda. I think I'm sure that is part of what is also what the Science and Technology Ministry of India is now moving forward to.
Thank you so much. I can talk for hours in terms of health, but I think you have to make it interesting as well. So, closing statement for India beyond pandemic. One closing statement, Professor Nalapat.
I think the one closing statement is the opening of realization that India can do it. And I'd like to compliment my very esteemed friend, Dr. Chalil, whose belief in India is very strong, Ambassador Kapoor. And I think that belief is now there in a significant part of the population because of the fact that we faced COVID and we faced it in a way which many countries could not, who are much better endowed than us. So, if I may say so, it's not a closing, but it's an opening for the future, of India as a healthcare provider for the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ambassador Kapoor, one opening statement.
Well, my opening statement would be that this is an inflection point in the transformational journey for the world to understand the relevance of India on the global stage in the Global Committee of Nations. And the time has come for India to be welcomed into the UN Security Council as a country, which is strategically very important for the world, which is very important for the world in terms of having the largest population and one of the youngest populations, as a country which is a driver of the global economy today, more than any other country in the world, as a country which is contributing in so many ways to digitization. And I am associated with some fintech work also, and I see the impact of Indian fintech on the global stage. So from all these perspectives, the time has come for the world to become a little more accepting. Today in India, we have hardly any headquarters of any global organizations. For the first 77 odd decades of our existence after independence, not a single global headquarters was established in India for any global agency. The first headquarters which was established in India was the International Solar Alliance, which was partly due to India, mainly due to India's efforts, not partly. The second headquarters which has been established, the Global Biofuels Alliance, again driven by India's initiative. Yoga is accepted as the International Day of Yoga all over the world. the world is very grudging in its respect for India and its appreciation for India and its understanding of India. The time has now come for a change in that attitude and for understanding what India brings to the world, so that not only the world benefits from it, but also the Indians can contribute even more to the world. I see Indians as leaders. The Vice President of US, she is of Indian origin. The Prime Minister of UK is of Indian origin. The Prime Minister of Ireland, Portugal, the Prime Ministers or Presidents of so many countries in the Caribbean. So we have great leadership potential. That is apparent. Nobody denies that. The CEOs of some of the biggest American multinationals are of Indian origin. In the C-suite of US corporations, more than 300 of the Fortune 500 have some top Indian in the top 3 or 4 executives of every organization. The Silicon Valley, more than 30% of the startups in the Silicon Valley are from Indians, IIT engineers and others. I can go on and on. The unicorns in the world, the maximum unicorns in the world are being created by Indians. So there is no limit to the potential of India. There is no limit to what India can contribute to the world. It is now for the world to realize that and open up the doors and their hearts and their minds to this reality. Thank you, Supreet, for asking that question.
Thank you. Great answer, sir. Dr. Pawan, please. An opening statement, India beyond the pandemic. So,
Yes, me?
yes, yes.
Well, I would just try to say that, India is in a very, very, living abroad. I mean, just like Ambassador and Dr. Joe, I live in the other far east of this thing. And I would say that the influx of India and awareness of India was much more in the US for many years. But in Japan, we didn't really have that kind of interaction with India, but I think Japan is now partnering mostly with India, and the collaboration between India and Japan is so strong. Literally every day we have some kind of initiative with India, whether it is Business India or Startups India or it is Skill India. So we're importing skill also from India. We are having schools, Indian schools, Japanese students going to Indian schools. So basically I'm saying people, even in the Far East, that were less aware of India are now looking towards India as a country with so much of resource, so much of intellect. And so I think the place for India to move out and provide everything is very strong. We are positioned in a very, very strong way. We are positioned in a very respectable way. We are admired by the world, and so it's time for us to act. How we do it is like we have to just make everything sustainable, and we have just to make things as easy to access, whether it's through digitalization or through partnerships with global organizations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. General Sharma, please.
My message is, or my concluding remarks is, we keep doing what we are doing and do not allow hubris to affect our performance. Nor should we start celebrating in advance that India is going to be at the high table. That brings in complacency, and complacency is not good. So I said, we do what we need to do, and the world will see the results of our efforts.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Dr. Sharil, if you can summarize.
No, I just wanted to say, thank you all for being in. But regarding the book, let this be, I think this panel discussion is a very good starting point. Let this be a discussion starter at this book. Let this start conversations. This shouldn't be a pathway to future, but this shouldn't be a pathway to a discussion to a future. I know we have smart minds here, a lot of IFS officers, a lot of IAS officers, a lot of civil service, army generals, AFMC graduates, whether it's Dr. Ruby or General Sharma. These are the smartest minds in the world. these guys can figure out, how do we do it for the world. We just need to come together and to think wider, think broader, and for a healthier world, a healthier India first, and a healthier world in the future.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to moderate such amazing people with great thoughts, and I learned so much from this amazing conversation. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Supreet. And since Dr. Ruby is still here, I'm going to wear a different hat right now. I'm a therapist. I'm a trauma therapist, and the whole issue around mental health and how that has escalated post-pandemic globally and in the country, it is phenomenal. And so when we look at this very precious resource, we are talking about our youth, we have to have on a war footing some kind of interventions which deal with the emotional and mental health. I cannot even begin to tell you what, for me, if you ask me as a practitioner, the biggest pandemic globally right now is a mental health pandemic, and we are not acknowledging it enough. So the models we have in education and so on, whether these are students going in for engineering or technology or medicine, their own emotional and mental health has to be stabilized first. That's where the preventive factor needs to come in. That's where the support systems need to come in. And then once we take care of our own, when India takes care of India, then we'll realize we don't really need to look outside what we have, this legacy that Mr. Nair and others talked about of Ayurveda, yoga, and so many Siddha, so many other systems. This understood the integration of a human being with the nature and the natural systems and the natural cycles. So that is what we have to bring back into research, into education, and so on. It's all here. We just have to connect the dots, and we have to go back into our own legacy, our own history, and not get limited by the structures that have come from the West 400 years ago. What we had tens of thousands of years ago. So let's begin to look deeper, look within, and let's take care of our future starting from home. So with that, a huge thanks to everybody who's made this evening happen. As we come to an end of this evening's proceedings, on behalf of Konarak Publishers, I would like to thank all the people who made this evening possible. Our heartfelt gratitude to Honorable Minister Shri Hardeep Puri for his special message. Our distinguished guests of honor, Shri Amitabh Kant, Dr. Ruby Pavankar, Lieutenant General U.K. Sharma, our eminent authors, Dr. Joseph Chalil, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, and Professor M.D. Nalapat. Thank you so much for this, the start of this journey. This is just the beginning, like you said. We've got to take these discussions.
Also a very special thanks to Shri K.P.R. Nair and Jiza Joy and Shan, and to Madam Lakshmi Puri also for gracing the occasion, KJ Alphonse, and all of our dear friends who, took the time out to be present there.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. To Supreet for moderating the session so efficiently. You're definitely one of those visionaries who's going to redefine a lot of things in the future. So continue being on this path, and good luck with that. To the Konarak backend team for putting everything together so seamlessly, to our friends in the media for all their support, to the IIC team for their cooperation and constant hand-holding. Last but not the least, thank you to our distinguished audience and friends. You have always been such an integral part of the Konarak journey. We are because you are. May we understand the inherent interconnectedness of all of life and how this circle connects all of us through this fabric of existence. And when we respect nature, both external and internal, we will realize how a sustainable health paradigm and a deeper understanding of the principles that govern all of existence is what is going to ensure a safe, happy, and healthy future. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My copy, sir, I like your. Super. Thank you, sir.
Who am I? I'm a professor.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. Thank you very much. I wish I could spend more time with you. That's lovely thinking.
Pity we couldn't be there, Ambassador Kapoor.
I think, see, Dr. Salil asking about this free version.
Yeah, we can announce that.
Only
Today, tomorrow.
Do it better. What's the